The RPF is the Rehabilitation Project Force. It is the Sea Org's rehabilitation center in the same way that a Maoist re-education camp is a re-education camp. In other words, it's meant to re-indoctrinate you as a Sea Org member to your Sea Org basics. It's meant to clean you up of all of your overts across your entire life, not all your dynamics, I should say. I explained those earlier, right? So when you go to the RPF, you are sequestered from the rest of the Sea Org. If the Sea Org is an intense monastic existence, the RPF is the Sea Org on steroids, okay? And how does that look? Well, it looks like you're totally separate you're grouped with other people who are on the RPF. It's like a prison setup. You wear black and gray clothes. You cannot speak to anybody outside of the RPF unless you're spoken to first. You can only interact with other RPFers. You have a very exact program of actions to do, which I'll go into. But the schedule is that you get up at like 6:30 in the morning and you muster up and you have 20 minutes to eat your breakfast. And then you get to muster and then you get to work. You do 5 hours of redemption time, which is you working with another person who's on the RPF doing the sec checking, the confessionals, the interrogatories. You're doing those on each other, right? You're not good enough at this point to have a Sea Org member dedicatedly just sec check you. You have to work, you have to earn it. You got to work with somebody else. And you do that for 5 hours a day, confessing all your crimes across all your dynamics. And there are hundreds of questions that you are asked on the e-meter. And so it takes a long time to get through all that stuff, right? It takes months and months, years. And so you do that for 5 hours a day. Then you have 20 minutes for lunch. And then you work for about 5 straight hours. And then you have 20 minutes for dinner. And then you work for another 4 or 5 hours. And you go to bed at about 10:45. Just enough time to get enough sleep so you can be physically rested enough to be able to go on the e-meter the next day and confess more sins. And the questions are along the dynamics that I explained earlier. So first you're getting sec checked on your first dynamic. And so you're confessing to times that you maybe didn't clean your body, didn't take care of yourself, didn't do a good job, didn't whatever on first stuff, right? And then you have an extensive sec check on the second dynamic, which has to do with sex. I think I was asked about 230 questions or something that I had to clear up on the e-meter about sex and family. And these are very sharp, invasive questions, and they all have to be dealt with. Get this, okay? I'm going to simplify something that's really pretty complicated, but in terms of procedure. But the bottom line is, what you want to do is not just get the sins that the person committed, but you actually take them down a chain where, okay, let's say I stole an apple last week. Okay, good. So have you ever stolen an apple? Yeah, I stole an apple last week. Great. Okay, when was it? Where was it? What did you do? How much was the apple worth? Blah, blah, blah. You get all this stuff noted down. But then you ask, is there an earlier similar time you stole an apple? Yeah, when I was 9 years old, I stole an apple from the store. Okay, good. When was it? Where was it? Blah, blah, blah. You get all the details of that. Is there an earlier time you stole an apple? And you end up going into past lives, and you're expected to. And the kinds of overts, the kinds of sins that are coming up as you go back earlier and earlier into past lives become bigger and bigger. To where you're saying, yeah, I stole an apple. Actually, I stole a whole field of apples with my spaceship, and I starved this city because of it, right? Like these get inflated into these great, big, huge.
In your past life, you're committing us, basically.
That's right. And eventually, what you're looking for is you're trying to get down to the evil intention that is in your head that caused you to steal an apple in the first place. And you have to get a very specific, exact evil purpose or evil intention. Was there some evil purpose or destructive intention that prompted you to commit that overt? Is the question that you're asked. And you go, God damn. Let's see, evil intention. Yeah, I wanted to destroy those people, right? That's your evil intention that prompted you over all the eons of time that you've lived to steal an apple, right? So it's not just that you stole an apple, it's what was the evil intention behind that? You got to dig down to that. And this is another one of the reasons why it takes so long. It can take you hours to go down this chain of just having stolen an apple. Well, you're not just saying you stole an apple. You're saying you stole an apple here and you killed a village and you did this and you did this. And here's your evil intention at the bottom of the whole thing. And that's just one answer that could come up to one question. Have you ever stolen an apple?
Right.
And you're being asked hundreds of these questions across all aspects of your life. So basically, you're roto-rootering your entire life. Every single thing you've ever done kind of comes up. It took me 3 years to get through this program. The bulk of the program was this. And you're doing this auditing, this sec checking, the counseling, 5 hours a day on each other, right? I'm twinned up with another RPFer. They're doing this on me, and I'm also doing it on them. I'm also asking them all the sharp and pointy questions and getting all of their evil intentions. So that's why it took so long to get through this bloody thing and finish the program. There's other things on the program that I'm not going to get into because they're just too technical. But they basically, come under the same heading of confessing your sins, taking responsibility for all the evil, horrible stuff you've done. And if that sounds like a good thing, it's not. Not the way it's done in Scientology, and certainly not the way it's done in the Sea Org. Because you're made to feel there's a lot of shaming that goes on with this. It is not a healthy atmosphere. When you're confessing these sins, they are being written up in reports. And those reports are being taken up with you, and you have to do things to make amends. Remember that liability thing I mentioned earlier? That is applied to every single one of the sins you've committed and confessed to. So you have to make up the damage for all this stuff that you've done, and you are shamed and shamed and shamed about all of this. And when the end result of it is to discover the evil intention at the bottom of all of your acts, then you come to have a view of yourself as, holy shit, I've been this really evil, awful spiritual being for all these millennia. Thank God Scientology is here to save me from all of this, right? That's what's supposed to happen through this. But after a while, I started realizing that I was having to make up answers to these questions because I had run out of them, and especially the past life stuff. And in order to get through this program, you've got to jump through these hoops. There were a couple people who were on this program for 10 years. 10 years of their life doing this, every day.
Awful.
I just can't think of, I guess I could think of some worse mental and physical tortures. I mean, there's the gulags and there's the Chinese re-education camps that exist right now. And those people are certainly having a harder time of it than we did on the RPF. But other than that, I have a hard time finding examples. Obviously, Holocaust survivors went through a harder time than people on the RPF. At least we were getting sleep. That's about the only thing I can say that we were getting was, a fairly decent night's sleep every night. But, that's about it. We were eating slop. We were having to run everywhere you go. And if you aren't producing, like I mentioned before with the call center thing, where if you're not making your quotas, then, it's dropping, give me 20. That was routine in the RPF. I got in amazing shape, actually, because you have to run everywhere. There's no use of elevators. We had to, we were making furniture and stuff, and we had to carry it up and down the flights of stairs because you don't get to use elevators, stuff like that. It was a very, very rigorous program. And I did finish it. I did not, about 75% of the people who end up on this thing leave. They see the light and they take off. I was stupid. I stayed, but I stayed because I had, done this horrible thing to my wife, and I felt very guilty about it. And I did love her. And I didn't mention before, when I was having this sort of phone sex affair, there was one point where we came together, and we actually could have gone all the way. This woman I was cheating with, we hugged, we almost kissed, and I stopped it. And I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I love my wife too much. I'm sorry, I can't. And that's about as far as that went physically. So that's as far as we went physically. And I stopped it because I'm not trying to like humble brag here. I'm just telling you what happened, right? It was wrong what I did. It was definitely a violation of my marriage vows, and I'm not proud of any part of it. But I think the punishment didn't quite fit the crime. 3 years in gulag conditions was not what I think is a fair punishment for what I did.
You were there for 3 years?
3 years. 3 years and 3 months. That's how long it took me to get through the program. And like I said, there were other people on that program for 10 years. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I had to confess all my evil intentions across all my dynamics. I mean, I had hundreds of these things come up in the course of the 3 years that I was doing this auditing.
Were you still doing your sales stuff?
No. The RPF is, no, dude, please get me on this, right? You're not doing anything but the RPF. There's no other thing in your life but this.
So awfully abusive.
6:30 in the morning until 10:45 at night, 7 days a week. There are no holidays. There was no seeing my wife. There was no going home at night. You were in separate quarters with all the people who were stuck on the RPF, and your job was to get through it. And that was all your job was. And there was a Sea Org member who was the RPF in charge, and he oversaw the administration of the program and made sure we were all getting through it, making progress on it. And if you weren't, you're getting kicked out. And the mindset of the RPF is not that it's a relief to get kicked out. You're there because you're being given your last chance to be a Sea Org member and make good on your treasonous actions. So you're there under a complete cloud of blame, shame, and regret. And it was 3 years of blame, shame, and regret because I was a guilty, horrible, awful asshole, and I deserved all this punishment, right? For blowing my post, for getting up and walking out after 8 years of intense bullshit. I finally had enough. Nobody else, by the way, in that management unit had lasted for 8 years. I actually had persevered beyond what most people could deal with. I took off one night. I come back. They were furious with me about that. There was no compassion. There was no caring. Nobody gave a shit about me. I let the team down. So then I get posted to do sales, and I start doing okay at that. So they move me up to this other thing. But like I said, I was broken, and I needed a friendly voice. If that whole phone sex thing was caused by anything, it was me desperately looking for somebody to care about me.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make it sound like it was a good thing to do. I'm just telling you where my head was at. So when I went to the RPF, I was a ruined, broken, almost suicidal person. I was not contemplating direct suicide, but it was there.
Yeah.
And I was literally washing walls, crying. When we were on decks, that's what, when you're running around doing all the physical work, that's being called you're on decks. And when I was on decks for the first month that I was on the RPF, I was a fucking basket case. I mean, it took me a month just to get my head around the fact that I was on the RPF and that this was my one and only chance at redemption so I could be a Sea Org member again and get my life back. As fucked up as my life was, at least I had a wife and I loved her. And at least I was contributing somehow to clearing the planet and saving the world. See, beneath all of this, I still thought Scientology actually worked, which was the only reason I was putting up with all this crap. And so for 3 years, that was my existence, right? There's no holidays, 20 minutes for lunch, 20 minutes for dinner. That's it, right? That's all you get. Every day, you lose track of the days after a while. I mean, Christmas was just another day. Birthdays, just another day. Nothing special about any of it. You know? So that was my existence there. And it wasn't fun. It was rough. It was very rough.